Ukrainian forces are deep in the trenches in eastern Ukraine as well as in Russia's Kursk region. And while they're making gains inside Russian territory, they're struggling to match Russian firepower and manpower in the Donetsk region. CNN's Rep Lycan shows us how advanced drones are helping bridge the gap.
Elite soldiers from Ukraine's 3rd Assault Brigade get out of their armored vehicle and right into a massive firefight. One of the soldiers is wounded, the others scream for a tourniquet. But the unit keeps moving. While Ukraine's army has been losing ground in many areas, in this part of the Kharkiv region, they've turned the tide. Later, taking several Russian dugouts, the deputy commander says. The enemy has no results, he says. Moreover, we have positive results. We've pushed the enemy back and captured a battalion line of enemy defense. While the 3rd Assault Brigade says they'll keep pushing forward, Ukraine remains badly outmanned by the Russians. And the 3rd Assault Brigade wants ever more combat drones to be their great equalizer. This is their drone school they call the Kill House. Drone technology is developing extremely fast on the battlefields in Ukraine, and the 3rd Assault Brigade believes in the future they will need even more drone pilots. So they're training as many as possible, as fast as possible, to get them combat ready. They've already trained more than 1,500 prospective drone aviators here, not just to fly the FPV drones effectively, but to use them as lethal weapons capable of destroying even tanks and armored vehicles. The greatest effectiveness of a pilot is his or her desire, the school's boss tells me. FPV pilots are people of a special mindset. They know how to hit the target, what ammunition to use. The ammo is becoming more lethal as well. A different Ukrainian unit now acknowledging they're using a trial version of a fire-spewing drone that drops an incendiary substance on Russian positions. But the Russians keep hitting Ukraine with much bigger munitions, missile strikes killing several people in Lviv in western Ukraine overnight. Search and rescue crews recovering the bodies for hours. Kyiv's leadership has vowed revenge for Russia's aerial attacks against Ukrainian cities, a driving factor also for the soldiers attacking Russian positions on the northeastern front. From Pletkin, CNN, Kyiv.
A total of 7 people were killed by those Russian airstrikes in Lviv on Wednesday. The city is near the border with Poland and has long been considered one of the safest places in Ukraine since the war began. But residents say that sense of security has been shattered.
As long as the war is going on, nobody's safe. We may forget about it at times, and we may believe that it will all be good somehow. We may believe it is an illusion, that we're in the West, we're close to Poland, nothing will happen here. But no, we see what's going on. Nobody is safe.
I've said it before, the war has become part of our lives. And as horrifying as it may sound, we become used to these strikes in a way. I'd say that life is going to the bomb shelter and back.
Of the 7 people killed in the attack, 4 of them are from one family. A warning, these images are graphic. Yaroslav Basilevich lost his wife and 3 daughters when a missile struck their home. They'd been taking shelter under a staircase at the time. One of the girls who was killed had written about her incredibly close-knit and harmonious family in her college application letter. Now Ukrainians across the country are mourning their loss. Well, in the coming hours, Ukraine's parliament is expected to consider the resignation of Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba. He and 5 other cabinet ministers submitted their resignations Wednesday. Only 4 have been accepted so far. Kuleba is one of the most widely recognized members of the Ukrainian government. Shortly before announcing his intention to step down, he spoke to CNN, urging Western allies to send more powerful missile defense systems. If lawmakers approve his resignation, Kuleba's departure will be part of a major government shake-up, which President Volodymyr Zelensky says is needed to give the war effort some new energy.
I am very grateful to the ministers and the whole government team that worked for Ukraine and the Ukrainians for 4.5 years, and some for 5 years. We need new energy today, and these steps are related only to the strengthening of our state in different directions.
Let's get more on this now from Michael Bosickiu. He is a former spokesperson for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. He joins me now from Odessa in Ukraine. Always appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Ukraine's Foreign Minister, Dmytro Kuleba, tendered his resignation Wednesday ahead of this cabinet reshuffle, just as a new wave of deadly Russian missiles struck the country overnight. What is going on behind the scenes politically, with President Zelensky explaining this as giving the war effort new energy?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Zelensky team is spinning this as a reset of the government, although a lot of analysts, including myself, view this more as a move to consolidate power within the office of the president, specifically the chief of staff, Andriy Yermak. I think, Rosemary, they've really overstepped this time. And as one former deputy prime minister put it, the government is careening towards a severe governance crisis because Dmytro Kuleba, I mean, this is a diplomat's diplomat, one of the most recognizable faces of the Ukrainian government. I can tell you there was a lot of dismay here on the European continent overnight in Brussels and Berlin, London, United States over his departure. And, you know, to give you an example of his kind of visionary and intelligence, he was on our podcast, Global Impact, and he told Melissa Ritchie and myself that the war is coming. This was a few months before the war. He said the war is coming. And secondly, he said that the world should stop looking at Ukraine through the prism of Russia. In other words, too much is calculated on Russia's reaction in terms of what's going to happen to Ukraine. But I don't see as strong as replacement coming. And I think one of the reasons, Rosemary, kind of to wrap up here, is he's leaving is that I think he got sick and tired because the office of the president has basically taken over communications for the government. And earlier on in the war, they cut the budget severely of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So a lot of embassies have very few resources. Probably he couldn't take much more anymore.
The timing is a concern, isn't it? I mean, you have to ask, why is a cabinet reshuffle planned in the midst of deadly Russian strikes on parts of the country when citizens of Ukraine are being killed and others are also under threat of losing their lives? Just many questions being asked here.
Yeah, in fact, in that interview with Christian Amanpour that you mentioned, he actually, Mr. Kuleba actually said that part of his family is from Poltava, so it really struck him personally. And, you know, why would you change him and so many other respected faces, including Olga Stefanishyna, another deputy prime minister, right at the time when you're begging for more resources from the West, especially those the okay for those long-range Western supplied missiles to strike deep inside Russia? It just doesn't make sense. And then one more thing, Rosemary, into this complicated mix, admittedly, is also forced out was the head of the Ukrainian state-owned Ukrenergo, the transmission generating company, a chap by the name of Volodymyr Kudrytsky, was forced out against the wishes of Western allies, including reportedly the White House. So I don't know, it just seems a lot of shooting yourself in the foot at the worst possible time.
Yeah, and as you touched on, I mean, the question has to be asked, how much does this cabinet reshuffle hinder and undermine President Zelensky's efforts to acquire more weapons from the West to defend his country, his people, particularly when these Western nations see this political drama playing out? I mean, they pretty much know what's going on here, I would assume.
You know, my gut feeling on this is that we're at a pivot point in terms of this current government. As you know, Zelensky came in with a wave of popularity. He had a majority in parliament, but right now he's even having problems summoning the votes to get some of these resignations, so-called resignations, accepted. So there's going to be some work for him to do in the parliament in terms of getting those votes together. But I think you're seeing also, as the clock ticks down to the November elections, a race to kind of future-proof assistance to Ukraine. And again, why would you remove someone like Mr. Kuleba, Olga Stefanishyna, the other ones who had such respect in Western capitals, and replace them with people who are virtually unknown. So, but again, and the Western capitals are also telling Ukraine, look, the war is not a pass for you to neglect your fight against corruption. And the moves that happen at Ukrenergo, which has done really, really well in the past few months. In fact, it's the reason I have power right now and I'm able to speak to you, is because they've done such a good job protecting power stations. A lot of this just doesn't make sense, sorry to say.
Yeah, so many questions. Looking for some answers on this. Michael Bossack, many thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.